All right, guys, hello back. So we have finished in the previous video the oral vestibule and the proper oral cavity. We know exactly what this is right now, I hope, from the previous video. Now we're going to jump onto the structure of the tongue, which is found on the inferior floor part of the, what is it called? The oral cavity. My brain is everywhere. Okay, so we're going to jump into the structure, the vascularization, the sensorial, and the motorial innervation, and some very, very general ideas about it and stuff like that. So stay tuned. We can also discuss its muscles and things that are involved that will help it perform the function that it does. So the tongue is a muscular organ formed of mass muscles covered by an envelope of mucous membrane. Okay, so it is covered by a mucous membrane. It's made up of tip, the root, the pharyngeal part, and the buccal part. And so it lies on the floor of the oral cavity, filling it almost completely. So the parts of the tongue, you have the root. It is the most posterior part through which the muscles connecting the tongue to the hyoid bone and the mandible. Its tip and margin lie opposite to the gums and teeth. So what this means is basically the tip can actually be able to function and touch every part of the gums and teeth within your mouth. The lower surface is related to the floor of the mouth, is covered by thin transparent mucosa and shows, number one, it raised fold right here, inferiorly. As I told you guys, it has the lingual frenulum, okay? And on each side of the middle line, a deep lingual vein. There's a lingual vein on each side right here, passes deep to the mucosa, okay? And lateral to the deep lingual vein, there is a fimbriated fold. It has fimbriated folds, which is a raised fold of mucosal having fimbria. I mean, you can say those things, but I would stop by mentioning the frenulums and the deep lingual veins on the lower surface. The dorsum of the tongue, so that's the superior part of it, well, that was the inferior, now the superior. It is divided by the V-shaped groove, sulcus terminalis, right here, and this part of it is called the foramen cecum. Sulcus terminalis divides the tongue into a 2/3 anterior part and 1/3 posterior part. That's the oral part, and that's the pharyngeal part. The apex of this sulcus is directed posteriorly and presents a foramen. There we go, the foramen cecum. There's a foramen within your tongue if you didn't know this. And there's also structures within it called the papillae, and we're going to discuss them here. And they line this line, which or the what is it called? The sulcus terminalis. Anterior to this line, there's a couple of papillae that you will have to know the names of as well, because he will like them. So the anterior 2/3 of the dorsum of the tongue, and some features of this dorsum part. The name, it is called palatine or buccal part or oral part. Position, of course, looks upwards and can be seen from the mouth. When you extend your tongue, the dorsum will be shown. Papillae, these are the papillae right here, as I said. And what papillae is present are the filiform, fungiform, and valle. Just know the names of it. I think you'll be fine. If you want to go ahead and know where these are located, it's your choice. Lingual tonsils, they're absent on the dorsum anterior 2/3 aspects of the tongue. They're absent. Embryological origin, you don't need to know that. Nerve supply, very important, very important, very important. Two nerves, lingual nerve and chorda tympani. Okay, the lingual nerve carries just sensation. The chorda tympani carries taste. So anything related to the anterior part of the tongue is related to taste. The posterior 1/3 of the dorsum of the tongue is called the pharyngeal part, and the position looks backwards, of course, and then it has no papillae. Lingual tonsils is present here, as you can see, lingual tonsils, and nerve supply, glossopharyngeal nerve carries all sensations, whether it's sensory or taste, as far as I remember. Muscles of the tongue. Okay, so muscles of the tongue you have to know the intrinsic muscles and the extrinsic muscles. The intrinsic muscles are the ones that are found inside the structure of the tongue. The extrinsic muscle are found generally things that control the tongue, but they're external, okay? And they will pull and push the tongue to generate motion in different directions. So intrinsic, they're all lie inside the tongue, no attachments outside the tongue. They change the shape of the tongue. So you know how people can make shapes with their tongues? That's the function of the intrinsic muscle. They include vertical muscles, transverse, superior longitudinal, inferior longitudinal, and they're all supplied by the hypoglossal nerve. And you have to know those muscles and study them and their innervation. As you guys see here, motorial innervation, sensorial innervation. We've discussed a little bit about the sensorial innervation here. Now we're going to discuss the motorial innervation. And the first one that controls the intrinsic muscle that controls the shape of the tongue is the hypoglossal nerve. And they're made up of 4 muscles. Extrinsic muscles, they arise from the nearby bones and are inserted into the tongue, right? So bones arise from it and insert into the tongue. They move the tongue and change its shape. They include genioglossus muscle, hyoglossus muscle, styloglossus muscle, palatoglossus muscle, and they all supplied by the hypoglossal nerve, except for the palatoglossal glossus muscle, which is supplied by the vagus nerve. And so we've covered the motorial innervation of the tongue. And I think you are required to know which parts or which bones these muscles arise from. For example, the styloglossus arises from the styloid process from its name. Palatoglossus, I think, from the somewhere along the lines of the heart palate, I think, or the aponeurosis, okay, and inserts into the tongue. And then the hyoglossus, maybe the hyoid bone, I think, as far as I remember. And you can just check the rest for yourself. I don't know if we're going to revise them in a bit, but I think we might as well. Why not? Okay, extrinsic muscles. So why not? Let's just do it. Muscles. So you've got everything in this table. So the muscles, hyoglossus, styloglossus, palatoglossus, genioglossus. Origin of the hyglossus, upper border of the greater horn and body of the hyoid bone. Easy. Hyoid, glossus, tongue. So from the hyoid bone, this part of the hyoid bone, to the tongue. So right here, hyoid bone, hyoglossus, to insertion, posterior half of the side of the tongue. Okay, that's the course of the hyglossus. Action depresses the tongue. Of course, you can see why this makes sense. If it contracts, it will depress the tongue, moving it downwards. Styloglossus, from the styloid process to, so tip of the styloid process to insertion, whole length of the side of the tongue. Right here, from the tip to the whole length of the side of the tongue, and retracts the tongue backwards, so it moves it backwards, which makes sense. Palatoglossus, from the palatine aponeurosis, as I said, it is a structure between the hard palate and the soft palate, and the palatoglossus, origin, lower surface of the palatine aponeurosis, insertion posterior 1/3 of the side of the tongue. And what it does is pulls the tongue upwards. Of course, the origin is here. If it contracts, it pulls the tongue upwards. And palatoglossus forms the arches. There's some arches, and this is these are the arches that are formed. Genioglossus, it arises from the upper genial tubercle of the mandible and insert in the whole length of the undersurface of the tongue. And so this muscle would pull the tongue to the opposite side. The two muscles pull this tongue directly forward. So it will pull it forward, so that it will extend the muscle. Okay. All right. So that's basically it for the muscles. We can just dive into now further on the nerve supply. So the motor, as we said, hypoglossal nerve supplies all the muscles of the tongue except the palatoglossus, which is supplied by the vagus nerve through vagus. Okay, there. Okay, so you guys will know why it says accessory nerve later, but then the accessory nerve, some part of the accessory nerve passes along with the vagus nerve, so that's why they're saying this. But just say vagus nerve and you'll be fine. Sensory supply, anterior 2/3 of the mucous membrane by taste, chorda tympani, and carried by the lingual nerve. for general sensation. Okay, that's the anterior 2/3. Posterior 1/3 of the tongue, mucous membrane, of course. All sensations are carried by the glossopharyngeal nerve. So easy. There, summary right here. We're done. Arterial supply, lingual artery. Of course, everything related to the tongue is almost always called lingual. So lingual artery, venous drainage, lingual vein. I don't really care about the lymphatic. I didn't study it, but if you want to, go ahead. And it's right there. Tongue done. Next, let's go. The next video will be discussing the external nose, nasal cavity, perinasals, sinuses, and the. Should we add the soft palate in? Why not?